Alrighty. First, a heads up. This build is going to be far from new player friendly. Heck, it's going to be unfriendly for anyone who didn't play the previous season, or heck, even the Arknights collab, so here we go. The Botany Ego Lamp Gregor is an absolutely insane unit. To say the least, he fits in a stupid number of teams and gives stonks to Potential Man, which is exceedingly stupid. Regardless, he's based off of Hohenheim, complete with Martin Def in the form of Lantern Yisang. His kit is quite overloaded with quite a lot more support capabilities than you may expect. So without further ado, let's just dive into it. As a modern ID, rather the newest released ID, we'll need to tackle his passive first, as it is pretty much essential to playing his kit properly. Dazzling Lamp is his first always-on passive and grants him a stack of Lamp. This is a unique buff that gives him soft bind for every 4 stacks, and at a maximum stack explodes to grant 10 aggro to the leftmost slot, as well as inflicting Dazzle to the enemy with the most current HP. Dazzle itself is a damage buff to base skills scaling off of Sinking and Burn. It's also a panic type change that inflicts 2 defense level down to units without SP, but otherwise causes a low morale of a bind and 2 offense level down, and double of that for a full-on panic. Balancing these 2 effects is core to his game plan due to many of his conditionals. The next part of Dazzling Lamp is by far the most important though. In focused encounters, he can redirect attacks to him regardless of speed. This is the same effect as part of Ishmael's guard stance, only it is toggled on permanently. Funny enough, this also counters Lei Heng almost perfectly, in that by taking his Gluttony skill and slotting it last, he has no bullets to use with it. Anyhow, coupled with a few of his other conditionals, this is exceedingly strong, but we'll get there later. Next is a unique condition. When gaining haste, instead gain 1 clash power. Considering how much haste can get spread around with various external effects, this becomes a little nice buff while also preventing him from accelerating away from his conditionals. Next, we're looking at Ego Gear Proficiency Manual. This is more or less a keyword bonus, but for those equipping Ego Gears, free defense level is really nice, especially on top of his already high +5 defense. Each Ego Gear wielder grants him 1 defense level. The list on screen is everyone who qualifies for his bonus. In most cases, we'll end up using 2 per archetype, with some room for crossover, but we'll get there later. Aside from that, an ally def gives him 2 pierce damage up the following turn. This only procs once per turn. Finally to note is his fueled passive. This is a 2 Gloom Resonance, which is easy to get in many compositions. Combat starts, gain Lamp for every 2 Gloom Resin. This lets him stack up Lamp faster, but isn't the most useful as we'll see later. Also on combat start though, heal 5 SP if an enemy has Dazzle. It's a nice little bump for doing the bare minimum with his kit. But the biggest piece of the appeal is Guardians of the Forest. At the end of turn, apply this effect to another ally that doesn't already have this buff and isn't in panic or corrosion states. As for the buff itself, before attack, plus coin skills heal SP, minus coins lose SP. Notably, the loss is double that of the gain. Aside from that, the plus ones give offense level at max, whereas the negative ones cannot place the user below -40 with the effect, then lose the effect afterwards. This is like premium support bonuses. While it isn't something as insane as healing 30 SP or spreading final power or any nonsense like that, it's cheap to fuel and readily available in many compositions. Last, I usually neglect to mention support passives, but this one I don't mind mentioning since it can indeed support Potential Man. With a free Wrath res, you get aggro and blunt damage up the following turn. Now, if memory serves right, you can 100% get Wrath through his counter, while qualifying for this condition easily thanks to his self-sinking. If we somehow double this up with Dishi Roger's passive, well, that's potentially a lot of blunt damage up, is it not? Anyhow, skill 1. Intense Stare 0 range. This is your pretty average potency stim style 2 coiner with a few interesting caveats. For 1, it gives a self-bind, and 2, it has 2 different sources of coin power, though each one only grants him a single coin power. The first one is for fulfilling his game plan, being bloody slow. As long as he either has 3 less speed than his opponents, only 1 speed or less, else if the target has Dazzle, he gains a coin power. If you're playing him correctly, this coin power is pretty much always there. The other one is your usual status related one. Ticks potency between Sinking and Burn, and while Burn is stupid easy compared to Sinking. Nonetheless though, this is another coin power. Unfortunately, there's no damage conditional on this thing, but I suppose Dazzle covers that to an extent. We can use this thing to set him up for lower speed thanks to the 1 self-bind. With this 1 bind plus the 2 from Lantern, he'll be at 1 speed no matter what due to his 1 to 4 speed range. Moving on, his skill 2 is Destroy the Visible with the Invisible. This is a 4-coiner that provides both burn and sinking, but also both potency and count. At 3 sinking counts, this will still go negative, but not by too far, as for burn, plus 2 burn is 2 more turns where the burn will linger, and that's bloody fantastic in comparison. Burn is far too easy to keep going with any amount of count, and while this would have been Firefist's job prior, we can at least supplement the loss here if we bring him along on a burn-oriented team. Now funny enough, the first 2 coins on this thing have 30% extra blunt damage. It's the funny invisible hammer, letting him do some split damage. It's more of a nice bonus, but as it's on the first 2 coins, the resulting damage is more negligible than you may expect. Aside from that, this bloody thing only gets a single coin power from status, like the skill 1. But when you fulfill the previously listed speed conditionals or dazzle, you instead get plus 2 clash power, which can increase this thing's reliability by a sizable amount. Now for the skill 3. This thing is finally one with proper damage conditionals. It's a 3-coiner that can gain a stupid amount of bonuses for keeping his speed low. First off, that list of speed conditionals or dazzle gives a coin power and 40% damage. As a blanket increase, this is a fantastic start. As for the status-based coin conditional, what do you know? It's blanket plus 1 for 6 across all of his skills. Huh, way too easy. Now in addition, Dazzle grants a whopping plus 3 clash power, and also turns this thing unbreakable. Bloody fantastic. Finally, for the stuff not tied to coins, it also gives him a plus coin boost if it kills, or if the target at the time has free Dazzle. Looking back, that means everything in his kits can get an extra coin power. Skill 2 especially looks good after a skill 3 use. Now for the coins themselves, they are pretty solid. Count application on the first, allowing this to go sinking neutral and otherwise exceptional for burn. A stim of 3 potency in both. And finally, big damage in the final coin. Under 25% HP or with Dazzle, we get a 60% damage boost. And finally, with Dazzle, we also get Gloom damage equal to 80% of the coin's final damage. This is some fantastic damage. While it isn't bones claiming by any stretch of the imagination, we aren't getting 205% that easily. The damage we do get is very respectable. The split typing can leave a fair bit to be desired though, as it is in both Pride and Gloom. Now the defense skill is a clashable guard. As mentioned previously, this can easily be a plus 8 defense level if we field ego users. In most cases, we're going to want to field at least 1, but 2 can come along for certain compositions. Now this thing is a modern defense skill, and more or less instantly starts his game plan. Doesn't matter if he wins the clash with it or not, what matters is that it turbos his lamp stacks up to max, meaning he's good to start going ham from turn 2 onwards. While it sacrifices percent HP per stack gained, on turn 1 this is only 7%, and well, he only has a single stagger threshold at 40% HP, meaning the risk is negligible. Aside from that, on turn end, it applies a haste to other allies based on his self-bind. More often than not, this is gonna just be the 1 ally, but 2 could be possible if he somehow gets a second slot. Now all of that out of the way, where the hell does he fit in then? Well, you see, in way too many places. If you only look at his 2 statuses, you immediately think, oh, it must be fantastic for burn or sinking. If you think of his damage typing, perhaps you'd give a shot at Pierce, since he'll always benefit from the full stop boy's Pierce fragilities. But let's say we want to go a particular kind of jank. Rather, what if we decide that he belongs on a Tremor Scorch team, and not any kind of Tremor Scorch team, but the Chicken Engine team? Something, trust in the process, okay? The last time we tried to do this, it wasn't quite as successful, but this time around, we've got way too many good pieces to work around, so let's go for it. Preface, sinking is the best keyword status in a vacuum. With how sanity works in this game, any amount of it we get stretches exceedingly far. This case is no different. Since we can't hope to stabilize his sinking outside of a dedicated team, and burn is far easier to stabilize, we'll be looking there specifically. Plus, the sinking on his kit is specifically just for SP damage, not to cash out for any actual damage. Then who are we looking at to start out? Well, to work with the guy, we're gonna want ego users. Plus, we're bringing in Regret Forced and Magic Bullet Otis. These 2 are the backbone of various payouts this team has to offer. Regret Forced offers a sizable amount of Tremor application and bursts. We get something of a defensive layer in the form of offense level down and plus coin drop on a skill 2 as well. Aside from that, Coerced Regret lets her clash well if there's a lot of status effects, and applies defense down for each Tremor burst that happens to enemies. This can surprisingly turn on Otis's passive too. Her defense skill is also a Gloom one, meaning we can slot that in combination with any other Gloom skills to proc Gregor's passive too. In terms of egos, she has the most powerful ego in Tremor, the one and only Everlasting. A good chunk of this composition is built around getting this thing off. Gregor can help fuel this with plenty of Gloom and a Pride to throw around. Aside from that, for this composition, we're looking at Command Meltdown. Now that may sound strange, but we're going to get plenty of Gluttony this time around. Fluid Sack is a solid alternative, but its use will eat resources that are harder to obtain in this composition outside of warping around it. As for Magic Bullet Otis, they're here for the insanity that is Dark Flame. It's a payoff that's far too easy to make use of, and we'd be fool not to. He's of course also an ego user, which boosts Gregor's tankiness further. Funny enough, this composition, thanks to Force, can easily pull off the defense level down for Marksman's Smoking Pipe, meaning she can casually crit quite often for additional damage. Her Sin affinities aren't as pretty though, provisioning mostly Pride and no Gloom for Gregor to otherwise use, but that is fine in working towards Everlasting and her own Magic Bullet ego. Speaking of which, her Magic Bullet ego turns her Dark Flame application up to 11 and lets her speed to 7 exceedingly fast, especially with the appropriate resonances going out. Beyond there, if we want to be particularly stupid this time around, we can use Sun Shower. This gives us 7 poise counts. Yeah, 1 proc of her passive alongside Sun Shower means getting up to 7 bloody crits for free. If you combine that with her low coin counts and say a Foricalgia from someone, well, somehow this time, we have the bloody Magic Bullet poise tech. That execution bullet gets to hit exceedingly hard all of a sudden. That or she's about to shoot out a Ghetto Fell bullet that hits 6 other friends. Nonetheless, we can actually get this funny tech this time around, with some future Gluttony resources. With the 2 ego users for this composition pushed through, we can look at the funkier parts of the engine, more specifically the chicken engine. You know how I said this composition wouldn't be friendly for those who haven't played the previous season? This part is why. We need the Roosters and their Lord. This means grabbing Lord Hongers alongside Yo Heathcliff and Sinclair. Yep, these 3 are about to do some of the dodgiest shit possible to dump an assload of damage between them, while inflicting a stupid amount of burn in the meantime. Now the whole basis of the chicken engine is to slap Honger's counter almost every single turn possible. This forces one of the Roosters to use their S1, out of which applies burn counts, and for the most part goes unopposed. This means the burn stack will always stay healthy. So despite Firefist's absence, that count is going to be stupid healthy. After the turn ends, they then jump into the backup and the second Rooster comes in. This Rooster then uses an S3 for free with Lord Honger's passive. If Hongers hits that counter again, then they're going to S1 for free again too. Finally, they get to use the skill they slotted for the turn, whether it be an S1, S2 or S3, heck even a counter. But then, they leave. And guess who comes back? That's right, the other Rooster, which then does the above loop again, and again, and again. Note that each Rooster can only do this twice to maximum effect, but if the fight isn't over by then, you've likely got more pressing issues or are dealing with a tough as nails boss. But yeah, this specific combo is disgusting, because for the setup, we're pretty much doubling the value of 2 Skinner's skill slots. Instead of just using 2 skills in that turn, we're using 4. Honger's counter, the Rooster's S1, their S3 from the Lord's passive, and finally, their slotted skill. That much can feel quite filthy already. Now, if we wish to make it worse, we time Lord Honger's S3 for Sinclair specifically. This makes Hongers apply a burn potency on hit 2, which can help accelerate the stack from time to time. Past there, the S3 is worth 3 skills. The Slam, the S3, and the follow-up. If it's used on the turn Sinclair returns as well, he uses an S3 on top of his slotted skill to boot, meaning that's 5 skills total. Yeah, the chicken engine is filthy. It keeps burn healthy, stacks up the potency like nobody's business, and of course spams out a ridiculous amount of physical damage alongside. But I also mentioned that their sanity is turbo boosted due to the Lord's entry passive. Yeah, that shit's bloody filthy. Remember way back when I mentioned the potential of the chickens for Magic Bullet Otis? Oh yeah, here we fucking are. Pure and total filth. As for egos, well, while they're not much of a priority on these 3, there are a few to note. Cavernous Wailing gives us a Tremor payout for Hongers, meaning we've got other ways to cash out. As for Tears of Tarnished Blood, that one is pretty much a freebie. We can make use of it whenever the opportunity presents itself. Sinclair's egos can be skipped over almost in their entirety, As for Heathcliff, Move-In Reg provides some burn on his skill 1 if we somehow need to go faster. As for Asymmetrical Inertia, consider it when Honger's passive charges are all used up and we no longer get entry bonuses. Anyhow, with that whole ordeal out of the way, it's worth mentioning that they provide us plenty of ego resources, notably a shit ton of Gluttony, some Wrath, Lust, and Envy, all useful for a wide variety of egos. While they don't particularly help out Magic Bullets, Lust does move the needle towards Everlasting. Honger's also happens to have Gloom on his S1, meaning he can activate Gregor's passive and contribute to funding Gloom to boot. Same goes for the Bloody Pride on his S3. I could go on, but you get the point. There's too much good here to pass up on when it comes to speeding through burn. Now the elephant in the room here, of course, Malfrost. Yes, if you really want to turbo hard, you can make use of the rabbits. For high HP also guarantees it doesn't mess with the chicken engine. For the most part, we only lose out on the Coerced Regret passive and Magic Bullet bullshit, but otherwise you get to guarantee Everlasting going the fastest by far, which is rather insane. But I prefer not to use her here since she wouldn't offer burn either and doesn't scale quite as fantastically without more Rupture stability. With that entire ordeal aside, we're gonna be looking at some supplements and options. Lace Salt and Foam Sinclair provide a stable source of burn and tremor. Though their count application isn't particularly strong, they are very neutral on the tremor and burn, only needing a single nudge in the right direction to fully pay off. Now Lace Salt alone is fine. The fella has some insane capabilities, but we're mainly looking at Tremor Scorch. This lets us raise the damage of Tremor Bursts and gives us an alternative payoff to Tremor past the Cavernous Wailing and Everlasting combo. We can of course entangle the Scorch too, making the payoff quite a lot more potent. Regardless, Lace Salt provides the right sin affinities as well as some of the more devastating egos for both Tremor and Burn. Specifically, Regret lets us stabilize the count while giving him a ridiculous 2-coin power for free. Capote is one of the single dumbest egos in letting Tremor suddenly mirror Burn. And finally, Crushbound Pass lets him spread Scorch as well as trigger way too many Tremor bursts at once. Using this to turn after Capote all but guarantees a stagger and trivializes a lot of the fights. After all, if you manage to get 99 potency and enough count to supplement it in both Tremor and Burn, that's 4 Scorch activations, which is 396 bloody threshold Razor. Couple that with the 396 Wrath damage, give or take, based on resistances, and well, we're looking at moving the stagger bar close to 800 HP on a Wrath neutral target. And that's not even accounting for Crushbound's own damage, which while admittedly not as much as you may expect, usually hits closer to 900 HP worth of stagger. Nothing outside of MDE takes that on unscathed, and even MDE cowers at that kind of combination of sheer bullshit. Aside from that is the funny Tangle Cleaver, so yeah, go slap hard with a 5-coiner and 3 bursts on his skill 3 when it's enhanced. Heck, even the normal version still triple bursts. As for Sinclair, he's support for this specific game plan and requires some adjustments to use properly. We'd have to ditch Otis and forget about Dark Flame to make him work particularly well. That or we'd have to shelve Roshu, but we'll get there later. This is in order to get Wu Yi Sung as the replacement in the chicken engine. Rather than rotating 2 roosters, it turned into rotating a rooster and an Uma, which, while not quite as potent, is a little more balanced for the Tremor. Another alternative is replacing Regret's Faust with Malfrost. That way we can keep Magic Bullet Otis. But that particular combination, I don't really want to recommend, but it is very potent on its own. That said, we've got other solutions for Tremor, so making use of Yo Sinclair is preferred in order to turbo up the burn more reliably. Which brings us to the Roshu of the hour. We're looking specifically at Eurodivier Roshu. Not for her support passive this time, but instead for her on-field capabilities. What might those be, you ask? Well, she brings a ridiculous amount of Tremor count. Enough to stabilize count on one target permanently. As for unfocused encounters, she actually has a pretty solid on-field passive that makes her slap anything that gets staggered once per turn. This slap is of course spreading Tremor count around as well, but she serves multiple purposes in that regard. Aside from that, she provides Sloth, Lust, and Gluttony, making some of the aforementioned Gluttony-heavy egos and passives easier to afford, as well as pushing us closer to the Everlasting drop. If you're wondering just how much Tremor counts she can apply, the S2 can dump 2 to 5 Tremor count based on her own Tremor count stacks. The skill 1 inflicts 2 counts as well, and neither burst it, meaning she boosts the stack 5 turns out of 6, for a rather obscene amount. On a single target, this is your guarantee for a Tremor payoff. Heck, if you somehow manage to get that funny stagger free hit, we get an extra count and free burst. This is one hell of a slept-on ID these days, and honestly, if it weren't for the sketchy numbers, is far more powerful than people give credit. As for egos, well, they're burn-focused. Forest for the Flames is fragile for free, on demand. Red Eyes is super easy to fuel with the extra gluttony and provides a safety net, whereas Fourth Match Flame is some added skill power and burn application for an otherwise Tremor-based unit. Finally is Great Trichiliocosm, the new kid on the block. This one is a damage-focused one and not quite as useful, but can dish out a sizable amount of damage if you decide to use a Foracalgia from either Faust or herself for some bullshit boys shenanigans, especially since this thing scales off of burn. Finally comes the bench. There's only 4 this time, since we need an extra backup slot to fuel the chicken engine. In this particular case, we're mostly looking for SP boosts to stabilize the composition early and snowball our way to an easy victory. First is the most premium option, Hanafuda Ishmael, and having both Gloom and Sloth in this composition, we can eventually fuel this passive and get up to 10 SP back when someone decides to roll 2 tails. It's particularly useful for Magic Bullet Otis and any of our sinners that have to ego for payoffs. Unfortunately, she's locked to Wild PP, and we don't have a timeline yet on when the next one is, though when the next one comes by, you can shard her on the spots if you don't have her already. Next we're looking at Liu Yisung. He's not quite as good when it comes to the backline in SP healing, but on turns where we're bound to lose SP, a good chunk of them will have Wrath slotted. Regret and Capote are both Wrath. Thankfully, Gregor and Otis's S1 is, too, alongside a variety of the team's S3s. While the healing is a bit weak, it's still a direct upgrade from base Yisung, at least in this team where burn is everywhere. As for Rodya, he has a few options here actually. The most simple is LCB Rodya, 20% extra damage to Gregor, since he has the most HP here. As for the other options, Rose Spanner is a dodgy one and only affects Gregor most of the time. This will only get use on one very specific occasion, and is more often than not a pass. Otherwise you can look at Lu Rodya for pierce damage. While everyone is at max SP, this will land on Gregor. Otherwise it's likely to hit Otis whenever she needs to shoot, or on others if they use egos. Those two are the main targets if you decide to run her though. If you just want Gregor's damage to go up, plot LCB and profit. As for the final pick, Index Dawn. I know it's free Gloom Resonance, and that it's not the most likely to happen unless we need to slot defensives, but it's a nice 15 SP bump at combat start. With all of the supplemental SP boosts, using an ego is going to be a lot easier and makes this composition a lot comfier to run. With all of that out of the way, we can finally arrive at play patterns. While I've outlined the chicken engine earlier on, there's some extras that we should take account of, especially when running a Tremor-based composition that really needs to work towards specific resources. For deployment, slot Gregor first. This lets most of the passives land on him first before others. Next, we're going to want Otis second, in order to let her recover SP from Guardians of the Forest. From there, you can soup the rest, but consider others who may need Guardian of the Forest as well to place further forwards. Faust is another good option since you'll lose SP each turn after using Everlasting. Turn 1 we need a few really specific things. In priority we want a Pride, Sloth and Wrath, a counter from Hongers, and 2 Gloom if we can fit it in. The last skill can be whatever fits. It'll be difficult to fit a 3rd Gloom unless you decide to forego the counter from Hongers. What exactly does this achieve, you might ask? Well, first it grants us the resources we need to activate Unbrilliant Glory for the first time. I did say this build would be very unfriendly for anyone who didn't play last season. This is part of it. Unbrilliant Glory lets us turbo Gregor's game plan a fair bit, and boosts his sanity upwards. The counter from Hongers gets the chicken engine going. In shorter fights, it doesn't matter if you field Sinclair or Heathcliff first, since it'll be over before we exhaust all of his passive uses. But for the longer ones, we're looking to field Heathcliff first. This is because after we exhaust all of the rotations, he'll be the one left on the field. Now, at some points, we're going to want to get Sinclair and Honger's combo off in order to let Hongers apply burn later. So if the opportunity presents itself, you can use his S3 with Sinclair for that buff. This isn't mandatory since it'll only be when Heathcliff returns to stay that Hongers starts fighting normally, but it is something worth considering. As for the 2 Gloom, it activates Gregor's passive. That grants the first in-line Guardians of the Forest spreading around the SP healing. In this case it's Otis. This can prevent a friendly fire incident later. If we forgo the counter from Hongers and use his S1, we can get a 3rd Gloom for Index Dawn's passive and heal 15 SP instead. Anyhow, turn 2. Use Unbrilliant Glory to get it started. And now we'll be fishing for a bunch of ego resources while getting some engines online. If it's a short fight, you can slot in a counter for Lay Salt. This will just get him going into his second state immediately instead of needing to burn bullets. Otherwise, you can S2 to pull us closer to Everlasting or S3 to pull us closer to Regret. For Forced, look at her Tremor count and determine whether or not you need the attack weight or not. An S2 is a nice defensive layer and Pride towards Everlasting, and S1 is Sloth towards it as well and some count maintenance. As for S3, we'll be looking at it for the sake of Laysalt's Regret. Slot a counter for Hongers again. Keep the engine going. From there, Otis is looking for an S2 to add Pride and stack bullets. Otherwise, an S1 with someone else's Wrath skill gets us close to guaranteeing Regret. S1 is best for Roshu due to our Lust resource requirements as well. Otherwise, an S2 is fine if she used her S1 or S2 on the first turn. For the Rooster, it doesn't matter quite as much, but Sinclair can get us a Lust and S1 is quite okay. Otherwise, consider the S3 if available and the S2 for its damage and coin reuse. Now for some guaranteed metrics. The Chicken Engine provides a Wrath, a Gluttony, a Lust, and an extra resource for Sinclair. Unbrilliant Glory is a Sloth return, which leaves us at the whims of the other four. Otis is either a Pride or Wrath, depending on her skill buckets, while the rest are harder to control from there. That said, we can tick off a few resources for passives depending on our choices. More Gluttony pushes the Chicken Engine's passives. Mixing in Wrath also boosts up their support passives too. From there, any Gloom and Sloth can help activate Hanafuda's passives. Going for more Wrath also lets us activate Coerce Regret too, but that one is further off. Regardless, the resources pretty much all go somewhere. Turn 3 is where we're starting Gregor's engine in full. Ideally, we have either a top slot S3 or an upcoming one. If we've already burnt it though, well, sucks I guess. We're going to want to slot his defensive skill. This will max his lamp stacks and inflict dazzle on the boss. If it's a single entity, it'll be the core. Otherwise, well, it'll hit the guy with the highest HP. The rest of the team can build up towards more egos, plugging the gaps in the resources and keeping the Chicken Engine going. Forced can slot a counter to activate Gregor's passive if desired as well. Anyhow, depending on your resources, you can activate a Magic Bullet or Regret most likely. If that is the case, I would recommend trying to fulfill their resonance bonuses as best as you can. Past there, keep in mind the cost of Everlasting and Cavernous Wailing. Turn 4. We can activate Gregor's S3 in best case. Otherwise, anything goes. If the S3 hits the dazzle targets, we're golden. We'll get a plus coin boost next turn, which will go quite a long way. This turn, keep the Chicken Engine going. If the Gluttony has built up, you can consider dropping a Command Meltdown to stabilize more sanity. Otherwise, save those resources. We're going to need a lot for egos later. Turn 5. Gregor can throw out an S2. 4 coins boosted by a lot of coin power. For reference, on a 4 coiner, each point of coin power is worth 10 base power, plus squeezing out the maximum possible through it is best. Just let the funny invisible bonk stick go ham. Anyhow, from here on, we're looking at ways to pay off Tremor, rather than strictly adhere to Gregor's needs. More specifically, we've got several ways to pay out everything we've been building up thus far, so let's talk about finishers and combos. First is Tremor's most basic one, Cavernous Wailing into Everlasting. Hongers should naturally be faster than Forced, so ideally we land a Cavernous Wailing followed by an Everlasting. From there, we want to land as many Tremor bursts as possible, meaning we'd want an S3 from Laysalt's and Roshu. Everyone else can slot whatever suits their fancy. This dumps out plenty of bursts and gets a nice amount of sloth and perhaps wrath damage through. Not the strongest payoff, but a relatively doable one in this composition. Okay, what else can we look at then? Well, Burn's main payouts. Magic Bullets. With this composition, we actually get a reasonable amount of Pride to get Magic Bullets going, and Dark Flame running. In which case, we can aim to fuel Magic Bullets and continuously pump out Dark Flame to finish a fight. Do note that most of the damage is Pride damage, and if the opposition is resistant to Pride, this will flop pretty badly. Likewise with the first combo and Sloth damage, as Reverb puts out that damage type instead. Now for the Wrath flavored one. This requires a decent bit more setup. Stack Burn as high as you can reasonably get. This shouldn't be that hard since the Chicken Engine keeps it particularly healthy and ramps it up accordingly. Next, we need to make sure Tremor Scorch has been applied to the targets. This can only really be done with Laysalt's S3. Preferably do it earlier in the fight rather than later. Next, we'll want to line up a Capote the turn before go. This should vastly accelerate the Tremor on target, even mirroring it to the burn. Past there on the turn to finally combo, we're looking to get in an Everlasting and as many Tremor bursts as possible. If we can afford it, this means getting through a Crushbound Past and Unbrilliant Glory. Heathcliff can even burst too with an asymmetrical inertia, and Otis can as well with binds. though she's better suited to just firing off another magic bullet or applying Dark Flame otherwise. From there we can get a Roshu S3 if possible, and perhaps a Cavernous Wailing if resources permit. All this to say, it's a lot of bloody Tremor bursts, and if that target isn't dead or staggered by the end of it, then Dark Flame is going to finish the job. Failing all of that, well, fuck. That's one tough-ass boss you're fighting, or you're in the MD mines and need to loop it again and again. Anyhow, this is just one way to play the new Gregor, and for the most part, he's playing a supporting role here. While it's a pretty cool supporting role, especially when spreading around the SP, it's not exactly his full damage potential, just the laziest one to do, since for all intents and purposes, he's always going to get those burn conditionals off. This is actually the third permutation of this team at this point, since I experimented with throwing in Wei Sung and of course Ujat Otis. This one was one of the most comfortable with the chicken engine, while sacrificing as little quality of life and payoffs as possible. There's of course sinking and pure burn angles and any number of weird permutations with other ego gear sinners. Heck, we can even get one this while PP if we're lucky. Regardless, bet you didn't expect 2 videos in a row, did ya? Well, neither did I, but here we are. I'd like to give a special thanks to Hermie in the Discord, because the fella helped me come up with a decent chunk of this. Or rather, pointed me in the right direction. Odds are I'll take a break for the next day or two before finally getting around to that Sinclair guide. After all, I've heard a lot about the fellas screaming about the damage ceiling on that S2. Reuses and all that apparently. Once again, community Discord is open. It was the source of quite a lot of the previous videos' takes, and I'll see if I stream something in the next few days when I'm not writing. As for what the stream entails, we'll see, I suppose. Nonetheless, thanks for watching or listening in. Hope you learnt some jank. If you enjoyed the content and want more guides like this one, subscribe and toss a like on the video. We only just hit 2K, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon.